Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Council Bluffs, Iowa. Had such a great time at Fellowship Church. People are so hungry to hear the Word. Had a wonderful time. You know, we're coming to you every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war, because the rapture's signless, but the second coming has tons of signs. So if we can see the nations literally forming together for those events, we can tell we're so close to the coming of the Lord. Why would we get into this? Well, if there's 2 minutes left in a football game, you got a 2-minute warning. If the play clock's down to a minute, the quarterback needs to see the play clock to make some changes. So we're looking at all these things that are showing us that we're so soon going to see the King, that Jesus is about to come back. Alarming, radical, wild things are happening every single week. Sometimes I forget about some of it, but we're going to try to get as much as we can. This last week, this is the number one thing that started happening. Hezbollah entered into northern Israel yesterday, bringing troops in. Now, there was talk of an invasion for several weeks, so Israel's been on heightened alert. So the Hezbollah troops came into northern Israel. Israel instantly took them out. And then because of that, they've sent several elite groups up to northern Israel. They sent some Patriot batteries up to northern Israel. So they're prepared for what's actually, the intel must have just been overwhelming because they knew it was coming. With that, though, of course, you've had all this information coming from missiles coming down into Syria. That stuff into Syria makes its way over to Lebanon. Remember, we talked about those new missile sites a few weeks ago. There's all these brand new missile sites that are in Lebanon that they're hiding in homes, hiding in hospitals, hiding at restaurants. And the whole purpose of all this is they're getting ready to invade Israel. So it seems like they're ready. Another thing that happened that's really crazy is Iran. 4 or 5 things about Iran this last week that are pretty amazing. You have Iran building a mock aircraft carrier, the exact size of one of our aircraft carriers. They towed it into the Strait of Hormuz so they could have some war games yesterday. They fired missiles onto it. In the middle of that, they fired missiles at Qatar and at United Arab Emirates. So you had sirens going off on all of our bases that are there that it looked like Iran was firing missiles at them. So with that, this is the crazy thing that we've gotten into the last couple of weeks. You had another explosion at another gas plant in Iran. Israel keeps preemptively setting off and detonating bombs to keep their nuclear program at bay. Pretty wild. They've had about 9 in the last week and a half. Why is that a big deal? The International Atomic Energy Agency gave Iran a deadline of August 1st that we've got to see the new generation centrifuges that you're using because they can't tell how close they are to making a nuclear weapon. That's why Israel's having to preemptively strike like this, because it's happening right in front of our eyes. So there's so much more of that will play out right here before the coming of the Lord, because you had another attack on the southern part of Damascus, and you had some more Iranian troops get killed because Israel's having to preemptively strike. A couple other things happened that were really cool. This one I really like. Water became available for the Temple Mount yesterday. Right up until now, the Muslims could get water on the Temple Mount, but the Jews can get water as of yesterday. Why do they need water? They're getting ready for temple service, because right after the rapture, they're going to literally have a makeshift temple, and they're going to start having sacrifices once again. So you have all this happening. We don't really get into all the stuff that's happening with the pandemic stuff, but there's stuff happening all over the world. Last week you had such an intrusion of flying ants into England. It was 50 miles wide, showed up on the radar. You have locusts swarming all over Africa right now again, just basically biblical proportion things that basically Jesus said. He said, man, you can tell what the weather's going to be, but you don't know your hour of visitation, so he wanted them to know. But I have liked to see Israel kind of come together for safety to combat these people that are trying to kill them. Another newspaper article came out in the Middle East, which I thought was really cool, secular newspaper, talking about Turkey literally aligning themselves to attack and annihilate Israel. Remember, Erdogan turned that museum into a mosque. They had prayers. Well, Greece got mad about this. You had rioting in Thessalonica over Turkey turning that Christian church into an Islamic mosque. With that, you had Turkey threaten them that they're going to bring their forces down to where the outskirts of Greece are. Well, France's Macron came against Turkey saying, hey, we're going to sanction you. You can't threaten NATO alliances. So you have all these different players with Turkey in 4 different countries kind of almost starting wars to get ready to surround Israel. So Turkey's doing their part. You got Iran doing their part. You got Hezbollah doing their part, because these are all groups that are going to attack Israel right after the rapture of the church. So we're so blessed that you can see the buildup for that and see what's going to happen right in front of our eyes. So many more things keep happening with all that. There was another coin that was found in the part of the city of David showing that Israel has a tie to the Temple Mount. I mean, you've got evidence after evidence after evidence that shows Israel's history. So with this, what do? We always go to the Word, always go to the Bible, because all this stuff is coming and going. You got pandemics that Jesus said would be birth pains, so you got event after event after event. But the Scripture's so clear. Remember, Jesus said that the generation that sees Israel made a nation and Jerusalem won back, that generation won't pass away till all is fulfilled. So those signs have happened in our lifetime. So we're blessed and encouraged knowing that, wow, we're that generation. But there's many more. You have the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You got the revival of the Roman Empire. You got the Temple Mount Institute that's ready to start having sacrifices. You got predatory birds. You got the cleanup crew there, 172 different species of predatory birds. You got fish showing up in the Dead Sea, first time in 2,500 years. Ezekiel prophesied about it. Pretty remarkable. Then they had the ritual baths around the Temple Mount fill up with water, first time in 2,000 years. So you have all these literal signs that are right in front of us pointing to his return. Russia in Crimea, Russia in Syria, 9 Russian bases in Syria. There was a time several weeks ago that 2 planes came from Iran into Syria, transport planes bringing armament every single day, and you don't hear a word about it in the news media. Why is that a big deal? That armament is working its way down through Syria to Hezbollah because they want to attack Israel. So signals and signs. Many more signs that are so cool, but I like the signals. You had blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles a few years ago. That's pretty radical. When's the last time you had 4 blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. 1948 when Israel's made a nation. 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. So, man, you got signals of the coming of the Lord. That's radical. You had the Bethlehem star this last year, first time in 2,000 years. You had Mercury do a flyby of the sun. The sun went down directly over the coordinates for the Temple Mount. Orion changed its instrument to hammer. The planets formed a sickle. The moon formed a sickle. You have hammer and sickle on the same day. That's Russia's symbol. So God's trying to show us there's changes coming. Jesus is about to come back. What do? Help our local church, help our local pastor, be engaged. At the end of the race, it's the most intense, cool part of it. I've heard people say, well, why would you want to talk about the coming of the Lord? Well, if you can find out how close you are to the end of the race, you hustle. The whole thing about this is that we accelerate and run faster. We have a lot of more work to do in a shorter period of time, so let's go for it. The Lord will help you. He'll strengthen you. He'll encourage you. He'll give you boldness to walk your race out and to finish your course so that we can finish off in Jesus kind of style. So soon, we'll see His eyes as a flame of fire, feet like undefined brass, voice of many waters, Jesus of Nazareth coming back to the planet. Man, have a blessed, awesome week. We'll look at all what's happening this next week. I know there'll be crazy things happening all around Israel, but Jesus is coming so soon. Have a blessed, awesome Wednesday. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the edu at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.